Hello. Here we go. Finally, we are live. Apologies for the little delay. Tiny little delay. I just got home from work a little bit later than I was expecting, and then everything took a little bit longer than I thought it was going to. But we are here now. Let me very quickly pop that on charge. Oh, and let's get into Austin, shall we? It's gonna be probably one of the most exciting weekends of the year so far. We have so many storylines going into this weekend, lots and lots of different bits and pieces that are going to be all over the shop, depending on how these upgrades look on the various cars, what we end up seeing. And I thought this is quite a nice time, all in all, because I'll have some free practice one on as well. We can have a little look at those upgrades that are coming to the cars. We can get into our predictions for the weekend as we see the cars come through. We can also chat everything Formula One. Before we get into the straight away, because it's a sprint weekend, we're straight into sprint qualifying, then the sprint tomorrow, and qualifying as well, and the race. We are live so much of this weekend, and it is so lovely to be back, isn't it? It has just been a ridiculous wait. I don't know why Formula One decided to put another 3-week gap in the calendar. Absolutely didn't want it to happen, but we are back nonetheless. Also want to say a massive thank you for the support on the most recent video. It is absolutely flying. It took ages. There was sort of a bit of a delay on it because normally I release at least a video a week. You'll have noticed that in the middle portion, didn't release a video because I was just hammering simulations as much as I possibly could. If you haven't seen that yet, highly recommend just popping it on another tab. Even if you have seen it yet, pop it on another tab. Hello, Tobin, mate. Sally's in the chat. Sarah's here as well. Space Boo. Ekas. I nearly read that as Ekans, but it's not that. Brock Snyder, what time zone is my time zone? I'm in the UK, so London time zone. Shocked to hear about the news about RB. We'll get into it. Been a very long wait indeed. Puck, sup? How's it going? Happy race weekend. Thank you, Tanya. Cleared everything apart from F1 this weekend. It really is like a full-on weekend of Formula One racing, isn't it? Is every single minute of this weekend is just going to be dedicated to doing as much race coverage as possible. And I can't wait for it. I miss these weekends when they're not here. Too big of a gap. I don't mind like a 1 weekend here or there. I do not want a 3 or 4 week gap in the calendar. I want to be on it as much as we possibly can be. There's been a couple of big news stories that have come out over the break. Not too big a dramatic sort of turning point. We have only got 6 races left to go. Although, to be fair, that is still a quarter of the season. I think that's being underplayed a little bit. A lot of people are like, well, it's over 6 races to go. It's a quarter of the season. It's a good chunk. 25% of the season is still left to play out. Probably even more than that in terms of the points, because we've still got 3 of the 6 sprint races to come. Got a sprint weekend this weekend in Texas, sprint in Brazil in a couple of weekends' time, and a sprint in Qatar at the penultimate race of the season. So much left to play out. Absolutely, season is not done and dusted as we stand. But the Drivers' Championship looks as follows. Max Verstappen still leading by a considerable margin, but not a margin that is impossible to close. Lando Norris, 279 points behind. Charles Leclerc and Oscar Piastri. I think that battle, and little bit of a spoiler for the video that I released the other day, I think that battle, Leclerc-Piastri, is actually the most interesting one. There's only 9 points, only 8 points, can't even count. Only 8 points between them. Piastri and Leclerc both absolutely in form. The Ferrari and the McLaren cars both moving in the right direction. I feel like this is like the one to watch. Carlos Sainz a little bit further afield. I feel like he's safe, though, of the 2 Mercedes cars behind. Interesting that, like, looking at it statistically, George Russell should be absolutely smashing Lewis Hamilton. But when he got disqualified from the Belgian Grand Prix, this whole drama completely changed. Lewis Hamilton now ahead of George Russell by a good chunk of points. 19 points George Russell's got to make up to his teammate. Sergio Perez has dropped to the back of that pack in 8th. Although he's not under threat. Fernando Alonso all the way down in 62nd place. I feel like Fernando Alonso is just racing in a championship of his own, right? If this is Formula 1 and like this is Formula 1.5, like people like to say that it is, Fernando Alonso's in like Formula 1.2. You know, he's very much like in a championship of his own towards there. We've got Lance Stroll, 24 points. Nico Hülkenberg, 24 points. Tsunoda, 22 points. That trio could be fascinating to watch. Even Alex Albon, I feel like, could even get in there. Could definitely mix it in with Lance Stroll, Hülkenberg, Tsunoda, looking at how the Williams has done in the 4 races since the summer break. Daniel Ricciardo, unfortunate. Off the grid, 12 points. Can Pierre Gasly catch him? I don't really think so. Ollie Behrman behind, 7 points. The Behrman barrier has dropped down to 16th place in the standings. Even though he came back, picked up another point, he's down there in 16th place. I don't think we'll see Ollie Behrman. Well, we're not expecting to see Ollie Behrman anymore this year. So should be done and dusted for Ollie Behrman in that sense. Kevin Magnussen, 6 points, obviously leaving Haas at the end of the year. Ocon going to Haas, 5 points for him. Colapinto on 4 points already from just 3 Grand Prix outings. Joey Guan Yu, bottom of the pack. Still 20th, by the way, because of an 11th place finish in Bahrain. That is atrocious, isn't it? Joe Guan Yu's best finish of the season came in the first race of the year, and it's been dreadful since then. You've got a feel for the Chinese driver. You really do. Logan Sargent also off the grid. Unlikely to pick up any points. I can't imagine anyone bringing in Logan Sargent for a race. And Valtteri Bottas at the back of the pack, because Valtteri Bottas' best finish of the season has only been 13th. Again, it's just been absolutely rock bottom stuff from Stakes Sauber. It really has. In terms of the constructors, McLaren lead. I think that's done and dusted, to be honest with you, just because of the quality of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Okay, there's upgrades coming to the Red Bull car, but I just think that driver lineup compared to Verstappen Perez is better, in my opinion. Ferrari will be looking at catching Red Bull. Mercedes kind of in a bit of a no man's land. Same for Aston Martin in 4th and 5th. RB, I feel like Haas could really start pushing to RB in the next couple of weekends, to be honest with you. Williams down there, 16 points. Going to be a big talking point. Williams, how they can do in these final 6 races, considering how good they've been since the summer. Alpine down in 13th. Can't see them doing any better than that. Oh, sorry, down in 9th place with 13 points. Can't see them doing any better than that. Stakes Sauber, unlikely to even score a point, let alone trouble a Williams or an Alpine in the Constructors' Championship. What's the RB news? Well, there's RB news and there's Red Bull news. So it depends which side of the coin you are on. Hello, Antonio, mate. How you doing? Lovely to see you back. There's nothing better than a race weekend. I could not agree more, Alex. And we will pop the free practice 1 timings up. In fact, let me get my free practice 1 stream up so I can actually see what's going on. And we'll get everybody caught up on everything that has happened and have a little chat just between the intricacies of free practice 1. So I'm trying to load this and talk at the same time. Can you tell? I sound like a robot. Probably. How was the dinner with the girlfriend? Very lovely, actually. Very lovely indeed. Okay. Let's get to this then. RB news and brand new RB jumper. This, ooh, scintillating stuff. RB on the back. Daniel Ricciardo dropped, of course, just after the Singapore Grand Prix. Not really news at this point, but it has happened between Singapore and now, so worth still talking about. Has been dropped from the RB team with immediate effect and will be out for the remainder of the season. And Liam Lawson will be taking his place. I feel like this was slightly on the cards. It felt like it was coming at some point. I thought Daniel Ricciardo would probably get until the end of the year, but I feel like Colapinto coming in has actually forced Red Bull to do this a little bit. I'll be honest. I think Colapinto, the fact that he's been so good for Williams, has kind of made Red Bull kind of perk up a little bit and been like, well, maybe rookies are worthwhile. Maybe if we put a rookie in the car, we'll also see a little bit of a bounce in form, because you look at Logan Sargent's side of the garage and it was just absolutely abysmal, wasn't it? Like, no real positivity, nothing to cheer for, trudging through the season. Then you see Williams bringing Colapinto. Colapinto straight away has that energy about him. He just has something that he wants to get in. He wants to get in there, show his worth, wants to prove to Williams that they've made the right choice. And like, he's got that drive in him. And you've just seen a lift of the whole Williams team, not just Logan Sargent, now Colapinto's side of the garage. Obviously, it also came with the fact that Carlos Sainz was added to the team for the future. That gave them a little bit of a lift over the summer break as well. And it just feels like that positivity that Colapinto has brought with him, along with Williams moving in the right direction with these upgrades, has just clicked them into gear. And I wonder if RB are hoping for a similar kind of thing. I know it's not quite the same because Liam Lawson has been in the car before and Liam Lawson has been at lots of races, but he hasn't been in the car during a race with that drive in him, you know, that real push for a weekend to improve on what's happening. So I feel like Liam Lawson coming into the team is slightly because of Colapinto. I just feel like that. And Ollie Behrman, actually. You can talk about Ollie Behrman and the same thing. That just energy. Ollie Behrman in Azerbaijan for Haas, you could just feel there was an impulse. There was I need to get something out of this. I need to show my worth in Formula One. I need to prove myself. And even though Ollie Behrman had a seat for Haas next season, he wanted to still make that mark. And I just feel like RB and Red Bull are kind of hoping for a similar kind of bounce, similar kind of positivity from Lawson, and an uptick in terms of their form. Obviously, they're trying to keep Haas, Williams maybe at bay in terms of the constructor standings and keep themselves in that kind of lower midfield, but top of the lower midfield that they have at the moment. For Liam Lawson, obviously, it's a brilliant opportunity for him. I've started to see a few people linking Liam Lawson and whether or not this is an opportunity for him to eventually take Sergio Perez's seat. I've seen a few articles that are saying Sergio Perez is going to retire at the Mexican Grand Prix. I'm skeptical about all of that, if I'm honest with you. I think Sergio Perez is still going to be in the Red Bull car for next season. Obviously, it's Red Bull. They do love a driver change. We've seen that a lot in recent years. You go back, well, all the way since Daniel Ricciardo left the first time, right? Since Daniel Ricciardo left the main Red Bull team, they've gone through so many drivers and so many people have gone in and out of that team. Even actually before with like Danny Kvyat, the fact that he was in and out and in and out. Like Red Bull, you can never fully predict where their drivers are going to be and what drivers are going to be where. But it does feel like it's going to be a good opportunity for Liam Lawson to show his stuff, maybe move into the Red Bull setup 2026. Again, though, it feels like we're overlooking Yuki Tsunoda a little bit in all of this. So it's a very tricky one to balance, isn't it? Oh, Ariosto. Thank you, mate. Member for 11 months. We're almost at that year mark for Ariosto. Thank you so much, mate. Appreciate that. And lovely to see you back after the second summer break, autumn break, however you want to be. RB stand for? It just stands for RB. It's just mental, isn't it? Just RB. It's not Red Bull. They made it very clear it was not Red Bull. Just RB. Absolutely mental. So yeah, Liam Lawson joins that calamity of a team. And we'll see what happens there. But the main Red Bull controversy, no, it's not a Raising Bulls. Maybe. No, it's just RB all by itself. But the main thing, the main talking point for Red Bull, let's get into it straight away, shall we? As P1, FP1 is starting on on the left-hand side. So I'll keep you up to date. If anything happens there, I'll pop the live timings up as well in a moment once we get some lap times coming in from the guys out on track. But the big controversy of the weekend is with Red Bull, is with a cheating scandal. Again, like, some people have taken this very extreme. Some people are not really sort of seeing this as much. I am leaning more towards this not being too big of a deal kind of thing. Just because I'd like to think that the checks are being done properly by the FIA. But I don't think so. Maybe, maybe not. When it comes to Red Bull, they found that in Singapore, or some teams have basically said to the FIA that they realized that inside of the Red Bull car, there is an activated device. You know, screw, a button, not sure. An activated device which can change the height of the leading edge of the floor, sometimes called the bib of the car. It's effectively the first part of the floor. You can sometimes see it under the front wing of the car. You see kind of a lip underneath the leading edge of the floor. And apparently, this device can be turned or activated, and it can lift or lower that front part of the floor. Now, any adjustment to that front bib clearance, so how far that is above the floor, is not allowed during parc fermé conditions, strictly prohibited by the regulations. And to quote it, any adjustment of the front bib clearance during parc fermé conditions is strictly prohibited by the regulations. That's what it says. So the fact that, you know, that is possibly being changed in parc fermé would not be allowed. Now, then you have to look at it from the other side of things. You know, being able to, well, you have to look at it from both sides, right? In terms of this device, if Red Bull were able to do that and they were able to adapt the height of the front sort of leading edge of their floor between qualifying and the race, so that's where it would be used, between qualifying and the race. Oh, Franco Colapinto, someone having in. Oh, little wiggle from Franco Colapinto. Pato Award there for the McLaren team as well. Absolutely lovely to see it. But if Red Bull could adjust that height of their car, it would give them a massive advantage, because if you can put your car as low to the ground as possible on really light fuel during qualifying and absolutely rinse it around, and then when you put lots of fuel into the car, obviously it would then hunker down even more. Now, the problem that you'd have there is because you can't raise the car, when you put the fuel in, it would sit on the ground. So effectively, during qualifying, you have to run the car a little bit higher than would be optimum to be able to then put the fuel in it come race day and for it not to sit too far to the ground. And obviously, we know from last year in Austin, you sit too close to the ground, you get disqualified for rubbing the plank of the car, the underside of the car, on the ground too much and wearing away the plank underneath the car, underneath the floor. So if you were able to raise the height of your floor, you could run the car really low during qualifying to get the best qualifying performance, and then raise it during the race to make sure that you didn't break that regulation of wearing out the underbody plank, because remember, you're only allowed to wear away around 10% of that plank during the race. So if that were the case, and Red Bull were able to adjust the height of the car, would make a really big difference. You'd be able to drive at your absolute maximum during qualifying with the car really, really low, and then you'd be able to change it for the race, and the driver would still be able to be really aggressive over the bumps and curbs, and it would give you that optimum of both settings. So you wouldn't have to sort of tweak it a little bit. Some drivers run the car a little bit too high in qualifying. Some drivers risk it during the race and run it quite low. You know, you see that balance between the drivers and the setup that they have for the weekend. Now, if that were the case and they were doing that, huge advantage for them. However, that tool for changing the height during that time is supposedly only used by Red Bull during practice sessions and also between practice sessions and qualifying. So Red Bull have argued that this device was not actually usable in the way that would have contravened the rules. Even though this device exists, it is inaccessible once the car is fully assembled and ready to run. That was what was said by a spokesperson of Red Bull. The device itself, even though it is inside of the car, once the car is fully assembled, so once you put the bodywork on, you put the chassis where it needs to be, blah, 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 put everything all together, it is no longer accessible to not only the team, but the drivers, anybody, okay? So if that's the case, that is absolutely fair enough. They wouldn't have been able to use it in Parc Fermé. It's just a tool that they would have had during free practice sessions, during testing, which you're absolutely allowed to have, okay? So you are allowed to have that on the car as long as it's not used during Parc Fermé conditions. So from this weekend onwards, from the United States Grand Prix, any adjusting controls for the bib height now need to be physically sealed. So not only does it have to be sealed whilst the car is fully put together, the Red Bull team will also have to put an additional seal on top of that adjusting tool. Again, you can kind of see it from both sides. Okay, Red Bull have said that this is inaccessible once the car is fully put together. How put together does that have to be? We're not sure. Have Red Bull been adjusting during Parc Fermé conditions? Maybe. We'll never really have a full clarity picture of that. We have to take their word. They're saying they haven't. The FIA have said, look, we appreciate that. Maybe you haven't done it. They haven't measured any sizable difference during those kind of regulation checks that the FIA have with the car. So we have to kind of take it as Red Bull weren't cheating. But you can kind of, up to you to make your mind up. Unfortunately, we're never going to know. We're never, ever going to know whether Red Bull did use this device to change the front bib height of their car during competitive parts of the weekend, during qualifying, during the race. We will never, ever know. But now they have been told, nope, done and dusted, absolutely not anymore. And there's no penalty for it, okay? And they will have to make sure that they drop that car. Oh, I do want to take a picture of this graph that is just coming up. Apologies. Just want to take a picture of that little graphic that has just come up because I need that for a video. But yeah, that is the Red Bull cheating scandal. And it's quite a scandal. But yes, exactly, Pop. Innocent until proven guilty. And also, Red Bull have a huge number or quite a sizable upgrade to their floor this weekend anyway. We'll have to see. Crazy leaked by a journalist who is friends with Jos. Jos hates Horner so much, sabotaging his own son's championship. Maybe. I mean, I know that Jos is quite a big push for Max Verstappen to go to Mercedes. So maybe he is just trying to take that away from Max Verstappen, take away that championship opportunity. Maybe that, starts to push Max Verstappen even closer to the Mercedes team. We'll have to wait and see. Okay, shall we have... Actually, this gives me a good opportunity to get everything set up for later on. Although I feel like that's good, isn't it? That's good. Perfect. It's as if I planned it already. I didn't. I haven't had time. Been at work all day. Been at work since 7 a.m. Got up at 7 a.m. And now I'm here. Best part of the day. Drive to Survive would be interesting this season, especially if they look at the behind the scenes of Red Bull. Behind the scenes of Red Bull has been an absolute calamity of a season so far. Boss trying to make him good. Yeah, I think so. So maybe. But it's interesting, yeah, as you say, that Red Bull cheating scandal has kind of come to the fore. The fact that they do have this adjustment tool. And the thing is with this, like all of the different components on the Formula One car generally do have little adjustment tools. It's just the way that Red Bull have done it. Ooh. And Lando Norris has had a little bit of a spin there, I think. Oh, no, sorry, it's Pierre Gasly. What on earth? I didn't realize Alpine had an orange livery for this weekend. What's happened there? I thought it was Lando Norris. Then I saw the BWT Alpine running orange. I completely missed that news. Does anyone know why BWT Alpine are running orange? That does look so much. It's basically McLaren orange as well. Sorry, it's Pierre Gasly coming up towards turn 1. Has a little spin. And didn't have the control. Orange is the new Alpine. Don't do that. I already don't like the fact that we have lots of blue cars. Just everybody. I feel like the Alpine should be pink. That'd be great. It would stand out way more than just being another blue car. In cases like these, where it's black-white illegal cheating, I'm in favor of the rule change, saying that there's a chance it could be used. It's assumed it was used. Yeah, I see what you mean. I know what you mean, Antonio. It's one of those kind of grey areas, isn't it? It's very, very frustrating. But the problem is, like, all of the measurements that have been done. So that bib height will have been measured, and the FIA has never seen a problem with that bib height on the Red Bull car. So it might like have just been something that is on the car. Because as I said, lots and lots of different cars and lots of different teams will use slightly different adjustment tools on their cars for various bits and pieces. The Indiana Jones movie. Oh dear. I feel like Indiana Jones, we had the original trilogy. It was great. I really like Temple of Doom because everybody loves Temple of Doom. I even tried to convince my girlfriend to go as Indiana Jones and Short Round. She didn't really want to be Short Round, though, which I thought was a shame for Halloween. But we just don't need any more. I think I gave up after, was it Kingdom of the Crystal Skull? Something of the Crystal Skull? Don't want any of that, I'm afraid. Everyone's really pushing it in Free Practice 1, to be fair. I suppose it is the only practice session that we got. Oh, Lewis Hamilton got all out of shape. That is a big spin from Lewis Hamilton through the S's. Oh, gets all over the bumps on the left-hand side of the track. Huge spin for Lewis Hamilton. He is okay. Luckily, there is quite a bit of runoff area here in Austin. Gives me kind of similar to the French Grand Prix vibes. I think Hamilton... There's a Haas to the right-hand side. Don't know whether the Haas kind of just unnerved him a little bit. The Haas isn't in the way. But just bumps onto the orange curbs. Spins through the S's. Catches the car. Oof. Wow, the tyre is put through so much. It looked like the tyre was going to rip off of the rim. Wow. Wow, that is a big spin from Lewis Hamilton there. Big spin. Alpine and just a bunch of jokes. About to become a customer team in 2026. Very true, yeah. Taking the Mercedes engine. Does feel like that is still going forwards, despite the fact that the Alpine, the Viri team, sort of did the protest, didn't they, at the Monza Grand Prix and beyond. Does feel like turn 4. Yeah. George Russell saying he had a similar kind of bumping around on turn 4. Literally, Lewis Hamilton hits the curb on the outside of turn 3, just travels over turn 4, like doesn't actually go round turn 4, just goes over the runoff area of turn 4, manages to catch the car just to pass turn 5. Luckily, it's not straight, obviously, it's kind of the S's, but on the track map, it looks fairly straight. But yeah, George Russell had a very similar incident actually in the Mercedes car. Makes you wonder, Mercedes got done here last year for running the car too low. Are they running the car just that little bit too low once again, kind of pushing the boundaries that little bit more? You'd imagine not, right? After getting disqualified here last year, you don't want to get disqualified in the same Grand Prix in back-to-back years. That'd be absolutely appalling. Why is Red Bull cheating? Just go back like 10 minutes in the VOD. We talked all about it. All about it. It was about an activated device that allows them to change the height of the leading edge of the floor. But the wonderful thing about YouTube is you can go back in time on it. And then what you can do, you can go back in time, watch it on 2x speed, then come back, and then if you've got any input, let me know. Oh, and George Russell has turned around. He is pointing the wrong direction. A yellow flag in Sector 1 for George Russell. Round turn 1. What's gone on there for George Russell? It's a big spin again for the other Mercedes car this time around. George Russell on the outside of turn 1. Okay. Just lost it right on the apex of turn 1. Just slid the rear end around George Russell. Let's have a look from the onboard. George Russell coming up the top of the hill. Gets into the left-hander. Doesn't get anywhere near the apex. And then it's just, yeah, just a lazy turning around, as Martin Brundle said. And then rolls down the hill, going backwards. Oof. Does look like this Mercedes car is not the most balanced of cars in this weekend's racing. Really struggling through that first sector. George Russell and Lewis Hamilton now both having fairly big spins. Lewis Hamilton's much more dramatic just because of the high-speed nature of turn 3 and 4. Repave the track. Be a problem running low, but yeah, also, yeah, slippery, obviously, very green. Yeah, the tarmac not quite in there. Is also quite a bumpy track as well. There's a lot of things that can run against it. Aimbot, how's it going? Where is Hamilton? Hamilton is in the pits by the looks of things. After that big spin, he needed some new tyres. Just coming out to the end of the pit exit, though. And we'll be back out on track in a moment, Lewis Hamilton, with, I imagine, a fresh set of rubber on that Mercedes car. Hamilton, big spin at turn 3. Just got all over the bumps, all over the curb. And massive spin. Just went across turn 4 into turn 5. Luckily, no one really around him apart from a Haas car that he was overtaking anyway. Big spin for Lewis Hamilton. It did look like the tyre was just going to rip itself off of the actual casing. Thank you for subscribing, Jupiter, mate. Appreciate that. Play the old PC F1 management game, Grand Prix World, and got banned for spying on other teams. Man, as if that was an option. You know what I mean? That would never be an F1 manager now, would it? Send Toto Wolff down to McLaren. See him spying. Get him to do some photocopying. Who's my favourite driver? I'm a McLaren fan, despite the RB jumper. RB have always kind of been my second team. Like Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri. Don't know why, because I hate the idea of them. like I don't really like the fact that Red Bull have two teams. And I do think it's a bit of one of those like things like it wouldn't happen now. I understand why it happened back in the day, because like Formula One needed somebody to take over that team, otherwise it was just going to go bust. So Red Bull were like, yeah, we'll have it. Second team, lovely job. But It just wouldn't happen now, would it? You know, if Haas went out of business, there's no way that McLaren would be like, second team, and the FIA would be like, yep. It's just one of those things, one of those quirks of Formula One that is just in play at the moment, but would never really happen again, and hasn't really happened much in the past either. So I think Lawson will outperform Colapinto. Ooh. I mean, the Williams car, not looking... I think the problem is the Williams and the RB cars, they're very different to one another. Like, I could see this weekend being really good for Williams, but then Mexico being really good for RB. You know, you look at the form that AlphaTauri had last year. Mexico was Daniel Ricciardo's best Grand Prix. Yuki Tsunoda was also really quick in Mexico until he hit Oscar Piastri. I think it's going to be a good battle, Lawson versus Colapinto. It's a shame Colapinto has, well, not a shame. Like, it's good that Colapinto has 4 points on the board. But if they were both on 0 and we got like a proper fight, I guess you could just say, Colapinto, take those 4 points off from now. Like, next 6 races, who performs better, Lawson or Colapinto? You kind of develop them. It's going to be tough to judge them side by side because they're obviously not in the same machinery. Lewis Hamilton goes wide again at turn 19, I think that was. Turn 20 just comes across the line. Still his best time so far, a 1:37.1 from Lewis Hamilton, but not quick at all. Do I like sprint races? Yes, I do indeed. Probably like that they have younger / newer drivers, seeing what they can do, develop, plus never compete. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I've always liked the second. I think Pierre Gasly was also a big proponent. I really did like Pierre Gasly. And do like Pierre Gasly. He was kind of my second driver for a very long time. And then I did one of those quizzes where it's like, which Formula One driver should you support? And I got Yuki Tsunoda. So it's just meant to be. Meant to be. I'm meant to be an RB fan, even though I'm McLaren through and through. Charles Leclerc still quickest out on track with a 1:34.9. Carlos Sainz just behind him. So the Ferrari car looking pretty decent at the moment. George Russell, despite the wavering form of the Mercedes, putting himself up in third. Max Verstappen with the new look Red Bull car in 4th spot. Lando Norris just behind him in 5th. Bottas currently running in 6th place, but was on the medium compound tyre when he set that lap time. Sergio Perez, 7th. Yuki Tsunoda, 8th. Oscar Piastri down in 9th. Esteban Ocon, 10th fastest thus far. Fernando Alonso in 11th. Liam Lawson up in 12th place on his debut. Shame that Liam Lawson does have an engine penalty for this weekend, or a grid penalty for this weekend, because they swapped around the engine components. Because even though he's new to the track, still counts as Daniel Ricciardo's car, you know what I mean? And therefore, because it's Daniel Ricciardo's car, it has used however many engines, however many gearboxes, and he now has to take an engine penalty for the weekend. So I think that's quite good, though, from Red Bull. I think that was maybe a little bit tactical. So if you think there's less pressure on him this weekend to properly, absolutely smash it, because he is likely going to start from the back of the grid anyway because of the penalties. So Lawson, not a lot of pressure on him this weekend to be able to achieve much under the circumstances. They'll more be looking at his average lap times, bits and pieces like that throughout the weekend. Lance Stroll, 13th place. Alex Albon, 14th. Nico Hülkenberg, 15th. Lewis Hamilton, 16th. Zhou Guanyu, 17th. Magnussen, 18th. Pierre Gasly, 19th. Colapinto, unfortunately for him, right at the back of the pack in 20th. Maybe the ghost of Logan Sargent sneaking into his Williams car at the US Grand Prix. What would have been Logan Sargent's second home Grand Prix of the year, but no longer to be. Colapinto doesn't get a home Grand Prix. No Argentinian Grand Prix at the moment on the calendar. Only practice? Oh yeah, of course. We'll see we'll see both what happens. Qualifying the sprint will give us a much bigger, broader picture of what's going to happen in the actual Grand Prix itself. We didn't mention before, we'll take just a little curve to one side, just because we're going to start talking about upgrades as we see the cars coming around, and we haven't talked about this. Fairly big news that Haas are now going to be working with Toyota. So we now have Haas, Ferrari, Toyota. What's the other one that they've got? Oh, it begins with a D. Dallara. So we've got a Haas, Ferrari, Toyota, Dallara on the track, which is a mouthful. But yeah, Toyota managed to strike a deal with Haas Formula One over the course of sort of autumn break. I'd love to get your guys' thoughts and feelings on this. The fact that Toyota are now coming in as their official technical partner. Of course, Haas will still be a Ferrari customer team. They'll still buy parts. So the engine will still come from Ferrari. A lot of the rear parts of the car, gearbox will still come from Ferrari. Haas are still going to keep that relationship. But TGR, which is the kind of Toyota racing side, which is based in Europe, not based in Japan. So it's actually based in Cologne, where McLaren used to use their wind tunnel. For sort of McLaren fans, you'll remember we used to have to send. So we'd try and build a part in the UK. We'd have to ship it all the way out to Germany for it to go into the wind tunnel. And then it would have to be tested and shipped all the way back before we could get an understanding of whether it was going to be good or bad. As you can imagine, not the best way to be working in Formula One, where you want lots and lots of data as quickly as possible. So McLaren now have built their own wind tunnel, but they do still have that connection with Toyota. So kind of went under the radar a little bit, but Ryo Hirakawa, I hope I'm saying his name right, is actually a McLaren development driver at the moment, does a lot of sim racing and sim work for the McLaren team. So, and he is a Toyota driver. So Toyota do still have a link to McLaren through Rio, but I think they just wanted more, because when Toyota were wanting to come back into Formula One in one way and keeping that link with McLaren, I think they wanted a little bit more from that partnership. And the fact that McLaren now have their own wind tunnel and Toyota are no longer linked with that in any way, it maybe just kind of made Toyota think, we're kind of losing McLaren a little bit here. So is there somewhere else on the grid that we can get our fingers into Formula One? Because Toyota, as much as they don't really want to go back to being a full team, at least not at the moment, by the looks of things, you know, we're not talking about Toyota buying Haas or anything like that. We're talking about them just, you know, being a part of the team, offering Haas a good opportunity. But yeah, and still kind of keeping their finger on the pulse. I think you talk about a lot of these big motorsport brands, even though they can't be in Formula One, like as a team, they do still like to keep their finger in, just making sure that, you know, they're still looking at that high level Formula One style development program. Maybe it will lead to a Toyota Formula One team down the line, because this is a much, much bigger partnership. As I was saying, they've got that partnership with McLaren, but this partnership with Haas feels like a real big step for not only Toyota, but for Haas as well, because Haas, it is huge for them. It's a massive boost in resources. I think it's a little bit too simplistic to say, well, Ayu Komatsu is the only Japanese team principal, so Toyota as a Japanese brand just went for Haas. I think as much as that does make sense, because Ayu Komatsu is sort of good friends with a few people that are quite high up in Toyota, and that's too simplistic a way of looking at it. I think it's the fact that Haas would have been looking for this kind of partnership. At the same time, Toyota were looking to develop their Formula One program as well. And it's quite nicely partnered, because McLaren are probably trying to move away from Toyota, to be honest, with their new wind tunnel, with the fact that it's going quite well as McLaren now. They probably don't need Toyota as much as they used to. And therefore, Toyota kind of moving over. I think the fact that TGR will be able to give them a wind tunnel, like they'll be able to give them their own simulator. So at the moment, Haas are sharing a wind tunnel with Ferrari, sharing a simulator with Ferrari. And that just means whenever Haas are doing anything, if Ferrari need it, Haas are shipped out. You know what I mean? It basically means that Haas don't really have a wind tunnel and don't really have a simulator because, for instance, we hear a lot about how, you know, during this free practice session, not only will the drivers be driving out on track, there'll also be sim drivers driving at the same time back at the factory. Well, Haas can't do that because they don't have their own simulator. All of the simulators will be used by the Ferrari team. So Haas have never had that benefit of being able to actually simulate during a weekend. They have to get all of their simulation work done out of the way well in advance of the weekend. So the fact that they can now do that is huge for them. The fact that they have access to a wind tunnel that they can tailor to their own car is huge because, again, it would be they would ask Ferrari politely if they could use the wind tunnel for a little while, and Ferrari would be like, yes, you can have it at this time, this specific moment, that. And they'd be like, well, we've got this part now, and Ferrari would be like, no, you've got to use the wind tunnel in a week's time. So again, it just gives them that license to actually use it when they want it. And I imagine that they'll start also helping Haas out with a little bit of the chassis construction. Presumably, the Dallara link will sort of slowly fade away. I mean, you don't hear too much about Dallara anyway. It's usually Haas and Ferrari that we talk about most in that partnership. But I think maybe that Dallara link will kind of go, and TGR will be almost that third part of the triangle, but in a much bigger fashion. Because as you can see, Toyota have already got TGR plastered all over the Haas car for the weekend. So I think this is massive. I think this is huge for Haas. You got to remember, Haas are still the smallest team on the Formula One grid by a huge, huge margin. And also, I think it's quite poetic that it's a year on from when Haas come into their home Grand Prix in America. They brought their biggest upgrade of all time in 2023, and it was an absolute flop, wasn't it? You know, they pushed this upgrade like it was going to really change the 2023 season and really push them up in the standings. And okay, it's helped develop into 2024, and they've been much better this year. They never really came off during the 2023 season when they wanted that upgrade to be like, this is us, this is it. So I do think Haas, the fact that that flopped, the fact that they then got rid of Gunther Steiner, got Aikamatsu in, it's just another big step in the right direction. The combination of Haas and Toyota working together in this way, I think is huge for them. I do think Haas, I think without Toyota, the way that I would look at it is every single team, if every single team put the parts on the car that they needed to and worked to their limit, Haas by far and away the slowest team by a considerable margin. You know, you're looking at kind of Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari being the biggest teams, Alpine, McLaren possibly just behind that, Aston Martin, in that group as well, and Stake Sauber once they become Audi. And then you're looking at like Williams and RB and Haas being by far and away the slowest teams on the grid. That should be the order, considering the hierarchy of what things they've got available to them, the development programs that they have, how they should be able to adapt over the course of a Grand Prix. Should be those big three, then McLaren, Alpine, Aston Martin just behind, and then Stake Sauber, Williams, RB kind of again in a bit of a trio, and Haas by far and away at the bottom. Now, with Toyota coming in, and with the fact that they can use the TGR facilities in Cologne, I feel like that does bump Haas up the order. I feel like Haas, at least now, even as a customer team, are properly in that mix with RB, Williams, the other kind of lower end customer teams on the grid. And the fact that Haas have been able to find a little bit of form, like the only reason, in my opinion, the only reason that Haas are 7th in the championship right now is because Alpine haven't delivered what they should be able to. Stake Sauber haven't delivered what they should be able to. And Williams had an absolutely terrible winter break. Terrible winter break, which then was pushed on by the fact that Williams also had an absolutely terrible start to the season where they smashed up their car at every available opportunity. and ruined their brand new car that they'd sort of worked really, really hard to finish up. So I feel like this Toyota deal is huge. Absolutely huge for Haas. It does finally jump them into proper contention. And the fact that they've been able to get more out of their car than they were get more out of their car than we were all expecting, and everybody else behind them has had pretty shocking years, does just really, again, just put Haas in a really lovely position moving forwards. I think it's really great for the team. But I'd love to know your thoughts. Lawson over Yuki. Interesting. Interesting. Let's get back to some of these lap times because we are starting to see some drivers coming out on soft compound tyres. There wasn't really too much going on, hence why I just decided to have a little chat about Toyota there. But Verstappen now coming along, some soft compound tyres. 133.8 from Verstappen. Carlos Sainz, still second fastest. 134.7. Sergio Perez, we've got 134.7 from him as well. Identical times, Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez. Charles Leclerc, fourth fastest now. Lewis Hamilton still really struggling down towards the back end of the grid. Obviously, doing a longer run now, but still not looking incredibly comfortable inside of that Mercedes car. And we'll see. Allegedly. Oh, sorry. How is Red Bull cheating? Yeah, again, I talked about it towards the beginning, but allegedly, well, not allegedly, they do have a device inside of the car that can adjust the leading edge of the floor during parc ferme conditions, which is not allowed. Now, according to Red Bull, they've never done that because they wouldn't be able to access that device once the car is fully put together. But that is now being monitored a lot more heavily. And the FIA have put in a rule where now that has to be covered. So that has to be completely sealed. Yeah, they say it's inaccessible once they've put the car together, but we'll never know whether that is truly the case. So, kind of have to... Again, we're going to take their word for it. We're going to take their word for it for now, because we'll never really know. But we're going to have to monitor that moving forwards, is effectively what the FIA has said. The FIA has been like, look, okay, this is what it is. Now we know that this device is here. It has to be sealed. So as soon as we go into qualifying, it has to be completely sealed and cannot be tampered with, opened with. And the FIA are going to go in, probably seal it for the team, and then know that it can't be accessed after or during qualifying and after qualifying in parc ferme. Who do I think will score more points next year, Leclerc or Hamilton? I'm a bit 50-50 on this because Hamilton shouldn't have scored as many points this season as he has. Or, well, maybe he should, but George Russell's definitely underperformed across the board this season. Again, that's only because of that DNF or the disqualification in Belgium. Had that race gone in George Russell's favour in Belgium, he would be ahead in the championship standings. So it's like, okay. One of my favourite present day tracks. Yeah, Cota's definitely up there. But what was I saying? Charles Leclerc or Lewis Hamilton? It's an early shout. Obviously, we haven't even seen Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari yet. I'm gonna back Charles Leclerc. I'm gonna back Charles Leclerc, you know. Why does it say they're cheating? Again, we talked about it. Talked about it at the beginning. I wish there was timestamps. I wish you could timestamp a live stream. We talked about it probably 40 minutes ago. Scroll back. It's one of the wonderful things about Formula One is you can go back in time. Let me see when we talked about it. We talked about it 39 minutes ago. So go back 39 minutes. There you go. Depends on Ferrari's race strategy next year. Surely it's got to be the fact that surely they have to let both drivers race. Surely they can't be like, Charles, we know you've been our main man for since Sebastian Vettel left. You've been like the number one driver here, Charles. But not anymore. Surely they can't do that. Change the leading edge height, but they say they've not used it. Yes, exactly. So they said, or well, we know that they do have a part in the car. They do have a part in the car that can adjust that rear, or the front end of the car, the front bib height. We know that is there. They've come out and said, yep, we have that. But they've said it is inaccessible during Parc Ferme, and therefore we could not have used it. How inaccessible? How much they did not use it? Let's see. I feel Lewis glory days have passed him. Maybe. I just feel like Charles been there, done it with Ferrari, you know? Should be more accustomed to the team. Has been more involved in the 2025 sort of workings of the car. I think if there's an opportunity for Lewis Hamilton to beat Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, it comes in 2026, right? Because the aerodynamics for 2026 are only going to be fully confirmed in January. So the team will be able to start working on 2026 in a lot more detail come the beginning of next year. And that's when Lewis Hamilton also makes the switch over, right? So Lewis Hamilton is going to have a much more of a say and much more involvement in 2026. Lewis Hamilton's not really going to have any involvement at all in the 2025 car, apart from obviously when he's inside of it and the small adjustments they make throughout the season, whereas he's going to be pivotal to the 2026 car. So I just feel like Charles Leclerc is still favored for 2025. 2026 is when it becomes very interesting between Hamilton and Leclerc. So even though Leclerc beats Hamilton next year, I wouldn't say, you know, Lewis Hamilton's done. I'd say it's a car that Charles Leclerc has been there since the genesis of. Charles Leclerc has been there throughout this entire regulation cycle. In fact, he was there before this regulation cycle. So Charles Leclerc would have been there when the groundwork for the 2022 car was being put in place. When the 2022 cars came out on track, he would have been there. Obviously, 2023, 2024, he's been part of that whole cycle all the way through to 2025. Whereas now, Lewis Hamilton is also going to be part of that cycle for 2026. So I feel like that's why it's perfect for Lewis Hamilton to make the move now. You know, you want to make the move a year before the regulations change, which is why there was so much talk about Max Verstappen moving, why there's been so much shift in the driver market anyway. Because Lewis Hamilton made that move, everybody wants to get their pieces in place for 2026. We're kind of looking beyond now. I know I do a video predicting the 2026 driver lineups, but I feel like it's going to be very similar to like what we've got now. I don't think the teams will want to make that dramatic a change between 2025 and 2026. I feel like the whole point of this year and this driver market saga where we had Sainz moving, Hamilton moving, Kimi Antonelli coming in, you know, we had all of those massive changes was because the teams were actually thinking of 2026 and getting it sorted a year in advance. So I don't think there's going to be many shifts between 2025 and 2026, honestly. Unfortunately, it's going to be quite another little sort of dull year when it comes to driver moves, but hopefully an exciting year out on track. What do I think of the chance of seeing an 11th F1 team on track soon? Depends what you mean by soon. 2028 is when Andretti and General Motors, I think, are likely to be able to get onto the grid. I think that's their first opportunity, is 2028. So if you see 2028 as soon, then yes, But even when it comes to 2028, I don't know if Andretti are ever really going to get on the grid. I think it's going to be really tough for an 11th team to come onto the grid and for it to work. Because a lot of the team, well, all of the teams on the grid right now are against it, effectively. Anyone think Perez to stake? I think that's the only thing, yeah. And you're right. Red Bull can never be predicted. As much as like I think Russell and Kimi will probably be the lineup for 2026 at Mercedes, unless Verstappen makes the move. I think Hamilton Leclerc will definitely be the lineup for 2026 at Ferrari. McLaren, I can't see changing from Norris, Piastri, and like you look all the way down the grid, I think most of them are there. Hulkenberg staying obviously at Audi alongside whoever. I think Ocon and Behrman will also stay at Haas for 2026 because they're brand new to it. You're not going to spend 1 year at a team and then switch. Lawson and Tsunoda, I guess that depends on the Red Bull team. I just feel like, I don't know, well, Albon's signed. Let's do them all. Ferrari, they'll keep the same. Mercedes, they'll keep the same. McLaren, they'll keep the same. Aston Martin, they'll keep the same because Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll both signed contracts. Haas, they'll keep the same. Alpine, yeah, Gasly doing, they'll keep the same. Williams, Albon, Sainz, they'll keep the same. So the only team I could see changing driver lineup between 2025 and 2026 is Red Bull with Perez. Like, obviously, Verstappen going would be a massive, like, look, cat amongst the pigeons here and would change completely what I feel about this. But maybe the Perez seat changes. That therefore means that the RB seats change because I'm assuming Tsunoda or Lawson takes that spot. And maybe one of the Stake Sauber drivers changes. Hulkenberg won't, but maybe they, keep Bottas for a year and then in 2026 they get in somebody else. I could see that happening. Don't get why Checo has such a following now. Not good anymore. I mean, he's always had a massive following. I mean, that's the thing. He's always been like the America's driver on the grid. You look up and down the grid. There's no Brazilians on the grid anymore. There's no American drivers on the grid. Okay, there's Canadian driver, but it's Lance Stroll. Nicholas Latifi was the other Canadian driver. It's like, no, not really. Not sold on any of this. I think that's why there's been so much buzz around Colapinto. It's an American or an America's driver, South American drivers on the grid. We are lacking in. Very, very European centric, as it always has been. But usually there was a few Brazilians dotted about, I think Sergio Perez has just taken on all of those Brazilian fans. They haven't got a Brazilian driver anymore, so they support Sergio Perez. A lot of the American fans that are coming into the sport, again, support Sergio Perez because there's a big Mexican contingent throughout the Americas, or throughout Mexico and America. I just think Sergio Perez fits a lot of the spots. And the fact that he moved to a big team at the same time, they started to do really, really well, Please explain why I think Red Bull are cheating. I don't think Red Bull are cheating. But they could be. Again, I explained it. Go back to 40 minutes ago. So this stream has been 50 odd minutes so far. 60 minutes in an hour. Go back to the 20th minute of the stream. And I explain all. 10 minutes to go in free practice 1, though. I'm going to put my headphones back on. My hair is annoying me because I haven't dried it. Got in, had dinner, had a shower, didn't even have time to dry my hair. Straight in. Straight on, streaming for free practice. I think Valtteri will go to Audi, renew his contract. I just don't think they want him. It's a problem. I think it's just like he's the final driver on the list, right? They really wanted Sainz. Then their second choice behind that was probably Ocon. Then their third choice behind that was probably Lawson. And their fourth choice behind that was probably anyone else. Albon. I could imagine like would have had talks with Audi at one point or another. Yeah, it just feels like he was definitely, the fifth choice is Valtteri Bottas. And unfortunately, they're at the point where they need to take that fifth choice because Ocon's confirmed, Sainz is confirmed. Like all of the other drivers that don't really want that heat, don't want to go to an absolute backmarker team for a year, have decided to lock themselves in elsewhere. So all of the other drivers they wanted have said no. And now Stake Sauber are like, go on then, Bottas, get in. Whereas next year, again, I feel like they'll continue to look for another driver. And like, Bottas, we get it. But we wouldn't mind if you another driver. That'd be great. Favorite track? This one. This one just here. It's on the wall for a reason. Predict the top 3 in the Constructors' Championship. McLaren, Ferrari, and Red Bull. The Red Bull's looking good. Max Verstappen, top of the timing sheet. Sergio Perez, third. But the Ferrari's been so good since the summer break. I think that's the battle, isn't it? Ferrari and Red Bull. Ferrari looking quick this weekend too. Ferrari will be quick in. Ferrari will be slower in Mexico, you'd imagine. Red Bull will be better there. Ferrari don't have the best of times at Brazil. But Ferrari will be better at Vegas. Ferrari will probably be better at Qatar. I'm going to go McLaren, Ferrari, Red Bull. Just because I would really like to see Red Bull fall further down. And that means that the championship in the driver's standings will also be a lot more exciting. I hate the fact that the Alpine is orange. I know that I said this before, but I just looked across and I was like, oh, is that Norris or Piastri? No, it's Esteban Ocon. For God's sake. I'm just like, what? Stop doing this to me. Oh, George Russell again nearly spins out of turn 1. Heard rumors about Maserati joining Haas. Nope, that is definitely clickbait. Doesn't really make any sort of sense at the moment, anyway. Ooh. Oscar Piastri missed the pit entry. Wow, that could have been big. A virtual safety car. Who has gone awry? Not sure. Oh, it's gone anyway. What weird. Was that because of Oscar Piastri? That tiny virtual safety car? Can't see anyone going slowly. Interesting. Here comes Lando Norris. Oscar Piastri. Oh, no, sorry. Oscar Piastri first out of the pits. Lando Norris going to follow him out in a moment. Soft compound tyres onto Piastri's car? Yes, indeed. Okay, let's see where Piastri can put himself amongst the fast cars in this one then. Glad Alonso and Piastri left Alpine. I think they are as well, to be honest. They're very happy about it too. Top 3 favorite tracks. That red flag on the map was just a glitch. No, there was a virtual safety car just for like 10 seconds, and I'm not sure what for. Like, it hasn't come up on the tracker, it hasn't come up on the incidents list. Not at all sure why there was a virtual safety car there. Thought it might have been for Oscar Piastri going too quickly and missing the entrance to the pit lane, but that was a little bit earlier, so not sure. McLaren Lego, yeah. I want to get the Mercedes one too. Maybe at Christmas. Never know what Santa Claus will bring me. Although I have just spent quite a bit of money. So I bought, I'm hoping to do some gaming streams soon. But my PC is not powerful enough to game on and stream on. So I decided to buy a Stream Deck. Ooh. Sorry, a Steam Deck, not a stream. I'm streaming with a Steam Deck. Voila. Does anyone else have one? I haven't really used it much yet. It's been a very recent purchase. But if anyone can tell me if they're, good, bad, middle of the road. Hello, Earth Arrow, mate. How's it going? Norris going to try a fast lap? You'd imagine so. Set of softs on the car. Just coming around towards turn 11 now, Lando Norris. Coming down the kind of back straight of it. Oh yeah, 3 favorite tracks. I completely forgot about that. Singapore. I like Austria. I feel like my top 3 changes. I like Brazil. I like Austria. Maybe those 2. I like Japan. If I was, playing the game and I was like, ooh, which one do I fancy? Probably pick Austria or Japan. And then in terms of like atmosphere and the race itself, probably Brazil. Ooh. George Russell, not very happy at all at this fuel load. They clearly have gone in, swapped some bits around, and George Russell still struggling as Oscar Piastri goes purple through the middle sector. Still a couple of attempts off Carlos Sainz's top track. What about Jeddah? Not a huge fan yet. Still quite new though, isn't it? Hasn't got into my heart yet. Nice new addition on the wall. Thank you. Ta-da. Very much. Thanking you guys for that one. Oh, Oscar Piastri. Black and white flag, failing to follow the director's instructions of keeping to the right side of the bollard at the pit lane. Makes sense. Oscar Piastri only managed to go 0.3 off Carlos Sainz's time. Lewis Hamilton, though, slower still than Piastri. Max Verstappen, 2.5 tenths off. The Ferrari's looking very solid this weekend. Very solid indeed. Ooh. Stroll and Ocon. Virtual safety car infringement. Possibly for those 2. Lando Norris running some Flovis paint on the front left-hand side of that McLaren car as he's going for a fast lap. No purple sectors so far for Lando Norris. 2 green sectors for him though. 25.5 in the first sector. 37.5 in the second sector. And that's only good enough for 4th fastest. 2.5 tenths off. And 13 hundredths or 13 thousandths of a second, sorry, off of Max Verstappen's time ahead of him. Not looking like a fun drive for anybody out there on track at the moment. A lot of drivers struggling. Charles Leclerc on the radio. Wow. Charles Leclerc asking, do I have a second lap? And no, he hasn't got the fuel to be able to go for another fast lap. Asks about who else is going quick, and nobody at the moment, with the checkered flag waved. Ooh, and a little mistake from Lando Norris. That's where he lost the time. That's why Lando Norris was not as quick as maybe we expected him to be inside that McLaren car. See the beautiful patterns on the Flovis paint, though, on that McLaren car. Set up. Checkered flag has dropped, though. Charles Leclerc's come across the line. So is Oscar Piastri, Hamilton, Russell, Magnussen. Tsunoda's in the pits. Hulkenberg done. Albon done. Stroll done. Perez done. Lawson just comes across the pits. Straight. Sergio Perez down in 16th place. Bottas has taken a checkered flag as well. Carlos Sainz also just coming around the final couple of corners across the line. Verstappen also. So that is free practice 1. So a few bits and pieces to look at. Ferrari looking very, very good. A very subtle upgrade to the Ferrari car this weekend. The words of Fred Vasseur. Max Verstappen looking fairly swift as well. That Red Bull car of his with a new floor. It's like kind of culmination of the 3 floors that they've had previously this season. Lando Norris, a little mistake. Oscar Piastri, the same. That Mercedes looking absolutely dreadful to drive. Hamilton and Russell, it feels like every single replay we see of them, they're not actually on the tarmac that they should be on, and instead running through an escape road or darting across the colours. Ooh, yellow flag in sector 1. Oh, no, it's in there. Magnussen and Hulkenberg also looking good as well. Not yet the Toyota has kind of upgrades coming their way, but minor upgrades. A Haas, obviously, look out for those Toyota logos on the car. McLaren with a minor floor upgrade as well. So I was expecting a little bit more, but that mistake from Lando Norris maybe tells us why they were 3/10 off the Ferraris. Mercedes has just been so poor since the summer break. And this is a big upgrade for Mercedes as well. Big change to the bodywork of the car. Side pod inlets, aero package, completely developed. And maybe they just don't quite have the understanding of it yet. As I said, Max Verstappen's car also with a new floor. And also that flexi front wing. Flexi front wing for Max Verstappen and the Red Bull team. Aston Martin doing a little bit of a Haas, to be fair, this weekend. I'm expecting Aston Martin to be really quick in the hands of Fernando Alonso. Not there at the moment, still outdone by Kevin Magnussen. But it wouldn't surprise me if Fernando Alonso is best of the rest by a considerable margin. Because, again, a big aero change to the Aston Martin car for this weekend. RB finally getting those upgrades as well. They should have got in Singapore, but not looking amazing. Tsunoda and Lawson, 10th and 13th. 10th from Yuki Tsunoda is pretty swift. He is a couple of attempts off Fernando Alonso's time. Is Red Bull actually cheating? No. Well, it's questionable. Is probably perfectly perfectly understood there. Exactly that. No. Well, it's questionable. If you go back around an hour or so in the VOD, I go through all the details of Red Bull and the supposed cheating scandal. It's been scandalous indeed. But I'm going to disappear off because I'm going to have overspending as cheating. Well, they did that. Yep, they did that before. But that was just on lunch, remember? You know, Red Bull just having really expensive lunches. That was why they went over the cost cap the first year it was introduced. Very interesting. But yeah, I'm going to disappear off. I would love to stay, but unfortunately, I do have some work to finish off because I kind of came back from work a little bit earlier than I should have, but later than I was thinking. If I didn't have a full-time job, I'd be right here with you. But I do need to just do that very quickly. So I will disappear. Oh, do I have the sector page? Of course I have the sector page. Here you go. I'll pop it up and then you can pause the VOD if you want to look at it in a bit more detail. The sector timings. But yeah, I'll disappear and we will be back in probably not even a couple of hours' time, right? For qualifying here in Texas for the Texas sprint race, which is tomorrow morning in Texas, tomorrow evening for me. Awesome. Is Danny racing on Sunday? Lawson taking over. Unfortunately, Liam Lawson is the man in the car. Again, go back to sort of 15 minutes into the VOD, and I talk about Daniel Ricciardo being swapped for Liam Lawson, what that means for those Red Bull seats moving forwards, and the pressure that is on Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda for the rest of the season as well. It's all covered during the VOD, and we'll talk about it a little bit more over the race weekend as well. But I am going to disappear. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll be back live again in a couple of hours' time for the first competitive